Hi guys and welcome back to SwitchUp. A big thanks to Square Enix who had us down to their London-based head office to try out Trials of Mana, which was unbelievably cool. We're going to give you a preview of the game so far based on our 2 hours of playtime, as well as lots of juicy footage for you to sink your eyes into. If you enjoy the content, then consider sticking around. So let's jump into the video. Much of the information you're going to hear is actually taken from an interview with both of the producers of the Trials of Mana and Mana series, Masaru Oyamada and Shinichi Tatsuki. While I won't go too much into the story and the changes, what I will say is that this is an overlapping one, whereby the different character choices you make will affect how the story plays out. Story is also intrinsic to the gameplay, and they've made a really nice and accessible method of learning the backstories of potential characters that you didn't choose as your main. At the beginning of the game, you get to choose 3 characters. You have your main hero as well as your 2 side heroes. You won't have the side heroes right off the bat, and you'll bump into them, and when you do, you're given the choice of whether to play through their backstory. This was a great little touch. I find very often in these types of games that when you're just given an on-screen text or even a verbal backstory, for me at least, it doesn't quite have the same resonance as playing through it myself.
In Altena, the kingdom of magicians, the true queen's magic was all that kept the freezing temperatures of the surrounding snowy lands at bay.
Now, if you're someone on the contrast to that who finds that easy, you can select not to play through and it will just give you that, a cutscene with dialogue and speech to fill in the gaps.
Priest in Wendo that was always nice to me. Heath was kind and helpful. He took care of me.
It's really well presented and it's a nice method, and I'm glad they give you the choice. Another interesting aspect of note with the story then are the characters that you have in your party will obviously change certain cutscenes and the way that situations are handled by these players. Onto the playable characters then, there are 6 to choose from, and these are all accessible right off the bat. We love the designs of these, with some seriously over-the-top hairstyles, and each of them having their own specific skills and abilities, which it was really nice to see introduced via the backstory system, such as training as a magic user who was born of royalty and being able to play through that. But so far, the voice acting seems decent, and there is the option as well to switch this to traditional Japanese. In terms of the visuals and performance then, the producers were very keen to make this game as vibrant and bright as they possibly could. In many ways, there are similarities here between the recent Dragon Quest XI title that we saw on Switch in that regard, and thankfully that also extends to the performance. Everything's running at 30 frames per second, and we didn't notice any drops whatsoever. Character models have no jaggy edges at all, with a good amount of anti-aliasing, but also a lack of the blur that you can usually associate with that technique. The frame pacing is also good, which is important because you don't feel much input lag, if any at all. And as this is a more action RPG, you're going to need to have that level of control. And we'll talk about the action RPG elements next. So onto that combat system then. Combat works in a way quite similar to something like Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. When combat's initiated, the area is confined with a barrier. Now, if you run against this, then as long as you don't take damage, you can escape combat, but if you do, well, you're locked in until you defeat all the enemies. You'll have a main and secondary attack, as well as some aerial moves for allowing you to ground pound and perform other skills. You can chain these together in a variety of ways and use healing potions and other items. It's worth noting that you can switch out your characters as you play, so that if there's certain abilities you want to use, you can change to your other character and use those special attacks and then switch back. All of which can be done on the fly. Now, while the producers felt it necessary to, as they call it, modernize the game by making it more action oriented, to give you a bit more information there then, we've got the weak attack, strong, area of attack, jump abilities, charge attacks, but the one that really stood out to me was the evasion move, allowing you to quickly dodge out the way of damage. And it's always this within a game that makes or breaks the combat for me, especially in an action RPG title. Most of the time, the moves were telegraphed enough by the enemy that you could actually dodge in and out and avoid any damage, which was good. They're also keen to stress that it isn't a completely action game. You level up as you go through battles, and they've tried to make it approachable and enjoyable for people that don't necessarily like that action approach. The main way they've done this is through the growth systems, which allow you to branch off into different classes of sorts. Now, we were only allowed to see the first couple of these, but they give new abilities, which again are accessible during combat and will require a certain button combination using the R buttons, and I believe it was Y to activate. You can see these down the bottom of the screen when they're available, and they charge up through combat. While we can't really give opinions on the game in terms of how we found it, I will say that the initial combat is very forgiving to the player, and I'm thinking that this is really just a way of teaching the player about the title. But having said that, it is notably easy at the start. Overall then, the control's nice, and the camera keeps everything within your field of view. There were only a couple of times, maybe in some of the smaller cave systems, where I found myself a little bit disoriented. One aspect that might disappoint fans of the series is that unlike its original, this time around you can't play as two players, it is a single player only. And the main reasoning behind this was due to the new graphics and the 3D isometric camera. They just felt that the only way they could do multiplayer well was if they had a top-down camera, and that wasn't what they wanted to do. From what we've heard so far, the music is sublime. Hiroki Kikuta is the composer, who is the same person who did the music for the Secret of Mana 2018 re-release. What's of note here is that you can use the original score or the updated one. It's been absolutely great playing through this game already, and I'm confident that players are going to take to the new design choices. I guess that in many ways the comparison to the Ys 8 game is going to be your best point of reference in terms of how this plays out, but it does still carry that classic feeling with lots of different items and secret areas for you to discover in each location, and a very clear system for allowing you to find where you need to go next. There were no points in the demo that we played at which I got lost, and that can't be understated. The minimap is cleared, and the sensible escape system, as well as the potential to evade enemies so you don't have to fight every single time, were smart choices. The boss fight that we fought is the one you can see on the screen, and while a little bit easy, the game's got some potential for some excellent encounters for sure. Obviously, Square were keen to show us as many different environments as they could, and in all honesty, in the short time we played the game, we went from lush beaches to rainforest, even to snowy landscapes, which is really impressive. Everything was running nicely, and I, for one, am really looking forward to when this one drops on April the 24th. Now, there will be a demo available before then, much sooner than that, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Let us know what you think of this. Will you be picking it up when it drops? And remember, if you're new to the channel, then consider sticking around. And a big thanks to our patrons who support us each and every month. If you want to join them, all the links will be down in the description. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!